I never thought I'd be one of those guys who got blindsided like this. Stephanie and I had been together for 5 years, married for 3, and honestly, I thought we were solid. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed in us. I was the guy who worked his ass off, trying to build a good life. I lost my job about a month ago, laid off unexpectedly from a company I'd been with for years. It hit me hard, especially because I'd poured so much into that job, and suddenly everything felt like it was crumbling. Stephanie, on the other hand, she's always been a bit of a bitchy, manipulative type. She's got this way of acting like she's perfect, like she's above everything, and she loves to throw it in my face when I mess up. When I lost my job, she acted like it was no big deal at first, but I saw the way her eyes flicked across the room, like she was already planning her next move. She started hanging out with her friends more, and she'd come home late, smelling different, wearing a little more makeup than usual. I figured she was just trying to make herself feel better, but deep down I knew she wasn't exactly supportive. What really started to bother me was the way she'd respond when I asked about her evenings or her plans. She'd brush me off, call me paranoid, tell me I was overthinking it. But I wasn't stupid. Something was off. It wasn't just the usual bitchy attitude. It was like she was hiding something, and I caught myself obsessing over tiny details. The way she'd slip her phone out of sight when I entered the room, or how she'd always rush to her computer if I looked over her shoulder. It wasn't just me being paranoid. I knew her too well. But I couldn't put my finger on what exactly was going on until the day I found out everything was about to explode. It started with a text. I was doing some laundry in the kitchen, minding my own business, when my phone buzzed on the table. Normally, I'd ignore it or hand it over to her if she asked, but this time I was curious. The message was from some guy named Chris, someone I'd never heard of. The message just said, "Can't wait to see you tonight, been too long." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't recognize the number, but the way she kept her phone locked and how she'd quickly hide it whenever I was near made me suspicious. I decided to check her messages later. That night she went out with her friends again. I stayed in, watching TV, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I should check her phone. I felt guilty, like I was invading her privacy, but I also knew I had to know what was really happening. When she left, I quietly grabbed her phone from the table. I unlocked it with a bit of luck. I knew her passcode, of course, because she never bothered to change it after a million fights over her hiding shit. I scrolled through her messages slowly, and my stomach dropped when I saw the exchange with Chris. They were talking about meeting up, about sex, about how much she missed him. She told him she hated her life, hated her husband, and that she was just waiting for the right moment to leave. My mind went blank. I felt this rush of betrayal so deep I couldn't even process it at first. Stephanie, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was cheating on me. Not just cheating, but with my best friend. Chris was someone I'd known for years, someone I'd trusted to be a good guy. And she was telling him she hated her life with me, that she wanted out. I stared at the screen in disbelief, feeling like my world was shattering. I didn't even know how to react. I just sat there, holding her phone, feeling the cold realization that I'd been living with a facade all along. She's always been a bitch, sure, but I never imagined she'd be capable of this level of deceit, of turning her back on everything we built just because she wanted some thrill with my best friend. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there staring at the phone, the evidence burning in my hand. I kept asking myself how I could have missed it, how I could have been so wrong about her. I thought about all the times she'd lied, all the times she'd been dismissive or bitchy for no reason. I wondered if I ever really knew her, or if I'd just been fooling myself into believing she was the woman I loved. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was an attack on everything I thought was real. And I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't let her get away with it, not without some kind of payback. The next morning, I woke up with that heavy, sinking feeling in my chest, the kind that makes your stomach churn and your head spin. I had the phone still in my hand all night, staring at the screen like it was a bomb waiting to go off. I was filled with this mix of rage, heartbreak, and a sick sense of betrayal I'd never known before. I kept asking myself if I should confront her right away or just gather more evidence first. But honestly, I already knew I couldn't just pretend I didn't see what I saw. This was too big, too raw. Stephanie was still sleeping when I finally got the courage to wake her up. I sat beside her, my fists clenched, trying to keep my voice steady. When she opened her eyes, I saw the bullshit smirk she always threw on when she thought she was in control. I asked her about her plans the night before, about her friends. She rolled her eyes and snapped, "Why do you care? You're just jealous I'm not stuck at home anymore." I didn't say anything. Instead, I slid her phone across the bed. Her face shifted instantly, like she knew exactly what I was about to show her. I watched her eyes flick down to the screen, saw the moment her smug attitude dissolved into panic. Her breathing got shallow and she sat up quickly, trying to snatch the phone away. "You're crazy," she spat, her voice high-pitched and defensive. "It's nothing. You're just overreacting. You're so insecure, it's pathetic." But I wasn't buying it. I knew her better than that. I told her I'd seen the messages, her talking about how she hated her life, how she wanted to leave me, about her plans with Chris. Her eyes widened, and for a second she looked genuinely caught off guard. But then, as if she'd rehearsed it 100 times, she started lying. "No, it's not what you think. It's just a stupid joke. He's just a friend." "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "You're just paranoid. I'm tired of your accusations. You lost your job, maybe that's messing with your head. Maybe you're just jealous because I'm trying to move on." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her words felt like knives stabbing into my chest. She was casting herself as the victim, as if all this was just my paranoia. But I knew better. I saw the messages. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she lied to my face without even blinking. That moment was a turning point. I realized how deep her betrayal ran, how much she'd been lying to me for months. I felt the hot flush of anger rise up, but beneath it, this crushing sadness took hold. I'd never wanted to believe she was capable of this kind of treachery. I'd always thought she was manipulative, yes, but I never thought she'd do something so cruel and selfish. The betrayal wasn't just about the sex or the lies. It was about trust, about feeling like I'd been living in some perfect lie for so long that I didn't even know my wife anymore. I didn't yell or scream right away, but inside I was burning. I told her I needed space, that I'd be back later to talk. As I left the room, I saw her face twist into a sneer, like she was already planning her next move. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was all a mistake, that Chris was just a fling, just some stupid mistake. But I wasn't buying that either. I knew her better than that now. She's always been good at lying, good at hiding what she really wants. I was just too blind to see it before. That day, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. I couldn't concentrate on anything else. All I could think about was how I'd been played, how I'd trusted her, and how I'd never seen the real her until it was too late. I kept replaying the moments, her dismissiveness, her sneers, her lies, and I started questioning everything about my life and our relationship. How long had she been doing this? How many other secrets was she hiding? Did I ever truly know her, or was I just living with this perfect facade she put on every day? It hurt so badly to realize I'd been so blind. I sat outside for a while, just staring at the sky, feeling numb. I knew I had to make a decision, but I didn't know what it was yet. The pieces of my life were falling apart, and I was left holding the wreckage. I felt a bitter mix of anger, despair, and that dull ache of betrayal. I kept thinking about the future, whether I'd stay to fight for something that felt broken beyond repair or walk away and start over. I didn't have any answers, only this overwhelming sense that my world had just been turned upside down, and I'd have to pick up the pieces one way or another. After I had some time to breathe and let everything settle in my mind, I knew I couldn't keep going like this. The idea of confronting her again seemed inevitable, but I also felt I needed a plan. I didn't want her to spin some bullshit excuse or manipulate her way out of it. I had evidence now, undeniable proof of her betrayal, and I was determined to use it, not just for my own peace, but to understand what the hell I'd been living with all these years. The next step was to decide how I wanted to handle this. Part of me wanted to storm back into that apartment, tear her apart, and demand answers. but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere productive. Instead, I started thinking about what I really wanted. Honestly, I felt like I was at a crossroads. Either I fight to fix this mess or I cut my losses and walk away. The betrayal was so deep that trust was completely shattered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her lying, her smirk, her dismissiveness. It was like she had been a stranger all along, hiding behind this perfect facade. I decided I needed to gather more evidence, more proof of her lies, of her cheating, of her manipulations. I went through her social media, her email, her text messages. I found more evidence, flirtatious conversations, late-night messages, even some explicit photos she had sent Chris. The worst part wasn't just the sex, it was the blatant lie she'd crafted around it all. She kept insisting it was just sex, just a fling, but I could see that she had been planning her escape for some time. She was already pulling away from me emotionally, and this affair was her way out. I sat down and made a list. I knew I had to think about what I was going to do next. Do I confront her with everything? Do I tell her I know and see what kind of damage control she tries to pull? Or do I just leave quietly, cut my losses, and walk away? Honestly, I was leaning toward the latter. The trust was gone. The love I once felt had been turned into this rotten, bitter thing. I couldn't see myself ever trusting her again. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the betrayal, the way she had manipulated my feelings for her own benefit. But part of me also felt like I owed her a chance to explain. Maybe she'd spin some story that made me question my own perception. Maybe she'd cry, deny everything, or blame her behavior on my job loss or some bullshit. I knew her well enough to understand that she was good at lying, at playing the victim. She'd probably come up with some excuse to minimize what she'd done or make herself the innocent party. I had to prepare myself for that. I knew she'd try to twist everything, turn it around on me, and make me feel guilty for catching her. I also thought about Chris. The fact that he'd been involved was a betrayal of his own, and I felt a mix of anger and disgust toward him. He was supposed to be my friend. How could he do this? How could he betray me like that? I kept asking myself if I should confront him directly, but I figured right now I needed to focus on Stephanie. Once I had clarity, I could decide what to do about Chris. Honestly, I didn't want any more drama, but I knew there would be a reckoning soon enough. In the end, I decided I'd give her one last chance to come clean, but I wasn't planning to just forgive and forget. I wanted her to see that I knew everything, that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I wanted her to feel the weight of her lies, the betrayal she'd inflicted not just on me but on everything we'd built. I realized that the woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, and I was done pretending I was okay with it. So I sat there, staring at her, knowing I had to make a choice. I could either fight for this mess or walk away. Either way, my life was about to change forever. I just didn't know how much pain or relief that change might bring yet. All I knew was I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore or pretend this was some kind of accident. She knew exactly what she was doing, and I was about to face the consequences of trusting the wrong person. After I had everything laid out in front of me, proof of her lies, her betrayal, and her manipulations, I knew I couldn't just keep quiet anymore. I had to confront her directly, face to face, and get some damn clarity. I wasn't the type to just walk away without a fight, especially not after what I'd discovered. But I also knew she'd try to spin it, deny everything, or throw some excuse at me. Still, I had to hear her out, see if there was any part of her that was still honest or if I'd been right all along. She was just a master manipulator playing her game. I waited until evening when she was back from wherever she had been all day. The apartment felt suffocating. Every minute that ticked by felt like an hour. I was nervous but mostly angry. I wanted answers, but I also wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. When she finally walked through the door, she looked different, more confident, like she already knew she had the upper hand. Her bitchy attitude was already back in full force, and I could see the smirk she always wore when she thought she was winning. "Look, I know what you've seen," she said, crossing her arms. Her voice was dismissive, like this was all some minor misunderstanding. "Whatever you think you found, it's not what it looks like. You're overreacting. You're paranoid. You always blow things out of proportion." I cut her off before she could spin her usual bullshit. I laid the phone on the table between us, opened and ready. "Tell me, Stephanie," I said, voice steady but cold. "What exactly is going on with Chris? Because I saw the messages. I saw what you said about hating your life with me, about wanting out. So how do you explain that?" She looked at the phone, her face briefly flickering with panic, then she tilted her head, rolling her eyes. "Those messages, they're nothing, just some stupid jokes. You're reading into it too much. Honestly, I don't know why you're so obsessed. You're just upset because you lost your damn job. This isn't about us, it's about you losing your mind." Her tone was dismissive, but I saw the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. I wasn't buying her excuses. I pressed further. "Don't lie to me, Stephanie. I found explicit sex chats. I found you talking about how much you hate your life and how you're waiting for Chris to come over. That's not some joke, that's betrayal. So either tell me the truth or keep lying, but I've had enough of your bullshit." Her eyes narrowed and her face turned icy. "Fine," she snapped, her voice rising. "Yes, I cheated. I fucked him, happy now. I was miserable, okay? You lost your job, you lost yourself, and I needed someone who actually cares. Chris is just a guy I met, and yes, we've been having sex, but it doesn't mean I don't love you. You're so insecure and needy, always accusing me of stuff. Maybe if you weren't such a loser right now, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere." Her words hit me like a blow, so she was honest, at least about that much. But the way she shrugged like it was no big deal made me want to throw something. I felt my stomach turn, a mixture of rage, sadness, and disgust. How could she be so callous? How could she dismiss everything we had like that? I had trusted her, loved her, and she threw it all away in a heartbeat. All that time I was trying to hold on to what was left, and she was out there lying, cheating, screwing around with my best friend. I couldn't breathe. The betrayal was too raw. The woman I thought I knew was just a hollow shell, a manipulative bitch who only cared about herself. I told her I needed some time to think, that I wasn't going to decide anything right now. I got up and walked out of the apartment, leaving her standing there with that smug, indifferent expression. I felt numb but also strangely alive, like I'd just woken up from a long nightmare. I kept replaying her words, the revelation that she'd been unfaithful, the knives she'd stabbed into our marriage. I knew I couldn't stay anymore, not with her. My heart was shattered, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I finally knew the truth. Now I was left with a choice. Do I try to fix this, maybe forgive her and see if we can rebuild, or do I cut my losses and walk away for good? I wasn't sure what the right answer was yet, but I knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The trust was broken beyond repair, and the woman I loved had turned into someone I barely recognized. The betrayal cut so deep that I wasn't sure I'd ever get over it. All I knew was I had to figure out what was best for me and whether I wanted to keep this sinking ship or abandon it for good. The days that followed were like walking through a haze. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, her face and her words haunted me. That betrayal had shattered whatever trust I'd ever had in her, and honestly, in myself for not seeing the signs earlier. I kept asking myself if I was just blind, if I had missed all the red flags because I was too busy trying to hold everything together. The worst part was the sense of betrayal, not just from her cheating, but from realizing I had been living with someone who was so manipulative, so willing to lie and deceive me. I kept replaying every moment in my head, her sneering dismissiveness when I asked her about her plans, the way she'd quickly hide her phone or lie about where she'd been. And then there were the texts, the explicit messages, the way she described her hate for our life. It was like I'd been living in a fantasy, convinced she was this perfect wife, when in reality she was just pretending all along. Seeing her lie so effortlessly, brushing off everything, made me question whether I had ever really known her, or if I'd just been caught up in her facade. I decided I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I needed to plan my next move carefully. I started talking to a couple of close friends, people I trusted, and told them what I'd discovered. They told me I was right to be angry, that I shouldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I also knew I needed to find out more about Chris. If he was involved with my wife, he was just as much of a betrayal. I wanted to confront him, but I also knew I had to handle that carefully. First things first, I needed to gather evidence and figure out what I truly wanted. That's when I decided to take a step I'd been avoiding, checking her emails and social media again. I needed more proof, and honestly I was hoping to find something even worse. Sure enough, I uncovered more messages, flirtatious texts, plans to meet up, even some where she openly talked about leaving me. The depth of her betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just a one-night stand. It was an affair that had been going on for months. I felt sick, furious, and heartbroken all at once. I couldn't believe how naive I'd been, how I'd invested so much into someone who was just using me. I started drafting a letter, something I'd give her when I decided to confront her again. It was a letter not to beg or plea, but to lay out everything I'd learned and to finally demand honesty. I wanted her to see how much she'd screwed up, how much she'd hurt me. I knew she'd try to manipulate or minimize her actions, but I was done playing her game. I wanted her to know I was serious this time, that I wasn't going to be a fool any longer, and I wasn't going to let her keep the illusion that she still had control. Meanwhile, I also thought about what I wanted from this. Part of me thought about walking away completely, cutting ties, and starting over. I was angry enough to do it, leave her with the wreckage and never look back. But another part, smaller, quieter, wondered if there was any way to salvage what was left, if she'd even be willing to fight for us. I knew her type. She'd deny everything, lie her way out of it, or make herself the victim. But I also knew that forgiving someone like her would be a long, painful process, and I wasn't sure I was up for that anymore. In the end, I realized I had to decide whether I was going to stay and fight or walk away for good. The betrayal had cut so deep that I wasn't sure trust could ever really be restored. It would take years of effort, honesty, and vulnerability I didn't think she was capable of. And honestly, I didn't want to be in a marriage where I had to constantly question everything, where every glance was suspect and every word was a lie. I'd been through enough. I wasn't going to keep chasing a ghost of what we once had. It was clear now that she was only interested in her own selfish desires, and I deserved better than that. So I made my decision. I would give her one last chance to come clean, to tell the truth or face the consequences. But I also knew I was prepared to walk away if she continued to lie or manipulate. I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I owed it to myself to protect what little dignity I had left and to start rebuilding from the wreckage. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her destroy me completely. I'd take back control, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. The day I finally confronted her again, I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Every step was heavy, and my mind was racing through all the possible lies, excuses, and manipulations she might throw at me. I knew she'd be ready to deny everything, spin it around, or try to make me feel guilty for catching her. But I was done playing her game. I laid everything out on the table, the messages, the explicit chats, the plans she made with Chris. I told her I knew she'd been lying, cheating, manipulating, and that I was done. Her face twisted into this mixture of anger and shock, but she quickly recovered her bitchy smirk. "You're crazy," she snapped, trying to brush it all off like it was nothing. "You're overreacting because you're insecure. You're making this into a huge deal because you lost your job." She looked so indifferent, so dismissive, that I finally saw her for what she really was, a woman who had no respect for me, for what we had, or for the truth. All her lies, all her fake smiles, they were just a shield to hide her selfishness. I told her to leave. Not just that day, but to pack her things and get out for good. I wasn't going to stay in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. I didn't want to be with someone who could so easily throw away our marriage for a fling with my best friend. Watching her pack her bags, I felt an odd mix of relief and emptiness. It was like the weight of her betrayal was finally lifting, but at the same time I was losing someone I once loved and trusted. When she left, she looked at me with this cold, calculated stare, like she was already planning her next move. She kept trying to convince me she loved me, that it was all a mistake, that she was sorry, but I didn't believe a word of it. Her words were empty now, hollow, like she was just trying to save herself from the fallout. I knew this wasn't going to be the end of her lies, but I also knew I wouldn't be a part of it anymore. This was the end of the line for us. In the days that followed, I started to pick up the pieces of my life. It was painful, so many memories, so many questions, yet I felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind for so long, giving her the benefit of the doubt, thinking she was just a complicated woman. But she was something else entirely, a manipulator, a liar, someone who had used me and discarded me like trash. And I was finally free from her grasp. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are. I learned to trust myself again, to value my own feelings, and to stop ignoring the warning signs because I was afraid of being alone. I still hurt, and I probably always will, but I also feel a sense of relief that I never thought I'd experience. It's like waking up from a nightmare and realizing the nightmare's over. I've started to rebuild my life one step at a time, and I know now that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, something she never gave me. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. I wish I'd been stronger, more confident enough to walk away before it got this far. But I also know that sometimes you have to go through the worst to find out what you truly deserve. I've learned that love isn't just about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go, even if it hurts like hell. So now, I move forward with a clearer mind and an open heart, cautious but hopeful. I know I'll heal someday, and maybe someday I'll love again. But for now, I'm just glad I finally took control of my life. No more lies, no more betrayal. Just me, standing tall and ready to find a better, honest future.